In this video, we're going to look at how to insert objects. And we're in slide view, and we're going to go up to the top and select the Insert tab. And once we do that, we're going to see a lot of options as far as what we can insert. The content library, there's a ton of stuff here as far as characters and photos and illustrations and icons and videos. We probably won't use this very often, but there's a lot of great stuff in there that you can choose from if you ever needed to. What you'll probably insert the most are different types of media, mainly pictures and shapes and captions. Maybe a video every so often, audio maybe every so often as well. You'll also be probably inserting a lot of text boxes, tables, that's a possibility also. Something that's really cool though are these interactive objects over here in this particular section. We have buttons and sliders and dials, hotspots, inputs, and markers. And the cool thing about these is once they've been added to a slide, you can go in and edit the properties and format that particular object just like you would a photo or a shape or something like that. You can also insert triggers and scrolling panels and actually mouse icons from this particular section as well. So you really have a lot of options as far as what you are able to insert into a slide or a project. And for our example in this video, we're going to go ahead and insert a background image. So I'm going to go up and select the picture option. And when I do that, it gives me two options. I can do picture from file or a screenshot. More often than not, you're probably just going to select picture from file. So let's go ahead and do that. And now I'm just going to locate the image that I want to insert. You can single click and click open or double click and it'll go ahead and insert the image. Okay, so this image or this background image was specifically designed for this slide. Notice here that we have, it inserts it basically, its center justifies or inserts the image. So we have an equal amount of space at the bottom down here, empty space, and at the top. Well, what I want to do is I want to take this image and move it down a little bit, so it doesn't cover up the bar at the top, which is going to show my lesson title. So we're basically going to take this image and bump it down just a little bit. Now there's two ways you can do that. You can select the image and you can use your arrow keys and you can bump it down. You can click and drag it if you want. What I would recommend that you do, because you generally want to get this to be in an exact position, is you're going to go up to your XY coordinates up at the top and enter in the correct coordinates for both. Now 0 is already correct because it's going, and that's based off of a left justification. The Y axis is off, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and just type in 35 and hit enter, and that will reposition my image. Now those of you who are familiar with Lectora, and probably every other authoring tool has the same feature, so you're probably already very familiar with this. But for this, I know 35 is the correct number for my y-axis because I know that this bar at the top is 35 pixels. So when I put in the correct coordinates, if you will, it's going to position this background image exactly where I need it. Okay, so next let's insert character. So let's go back up to insert. Again, I'm going back to picture from file, and let's insert our main character, Mr. Don Kirby, and we'll do this guy right here. So again, we can click it. Once we click it, it's going to center, justify, or insert the image, and now you're just going to take this guy and you're going to move him. We'll move him wherever we need him to be. Okay. One of the things that we don't want to do, and again, this is something that's been standard at this office for a long time, is we don't want to resize objects once we import them into a slide or add them to the slide. We want to go into Photoshop, resize it accordingly, and then re-import it or reinsert it into the slide and into the project. So we wouldn't want to take this and move it up and down and all that kind of stuff. We want to leave it at the original ratio or the original size and then move it accordingly. Now, barring resizing the image, there's still a lot of edits we can make to this image once it's been inserted into the slide. And any editing on this image, you want to make sure you're on the Format tab at the top. And once the Format tab has been selected, there are a lot of things you can do to edit this image. And we won't go over all of them because you're probably familiar with most of them. Again, if you're familiar with PowerPoint, it looks very similar to that. For example, rotating the image, we can rotate 90 degrees right, left, vertical, horizontal. We can group objects together just like you can in PowerPoint. and that kind of thing. So again, that's going to be something that you probably will use relatively often. You can also add picture shapes and borders and effects and all of that fun stuff that we're used to having in other authoring tools and in PowerPoint and so on. So as you can see, it's fairly easy to insert and edit objects. One of the things that I'll show you though real quick that's been a huge help is the Arrange and Align section, which is located right here. So let me insert a few objects real quick, and then I'll show you how this particular section can be extremely helpful. And all I'm going to do is insert a few shapes, and we'll just go with boxes. And again, I don't really care what the size is and what they look like right now. I'm just going to show you this for example purposes, and again, I'm just going to copy this object a few times. And I'm just going to kind of mess them up a little bit just so this makes a little bit more sense. And what I'm doing now is anytime you have a lot of multiple shapes, buttons, triggers, or whatever, and you need to get those aligned, it's very, very easy to do that by using, again, the Format tab and then this Arrange and Align section. So if I wanted all of these three boxes to be lined up perfectly even, I'm just going to select them all. So I'm going to hold down my Control key and I'll select each one. And obviously when we see this bounding box, we know that it's been selected. So if I wanted to take these three objects and make sure they're perfectly aligned, I'm just going to select all three. And then I'm going to go up and we have some icons up here. And obviously each one of these will do something different, but I'm just going to select, and in this case it doesn't matter if I do align right or align left. When I select, it's going to perfectly align all three of these objects. Well, that's great, but we're not done yet because now we have unequal space between the top and the middle and the bottom object here. So the next thing I'm going to do is simply select this one, distribute vertically, and it'll distribute those evenly. So if you notice, the top object stayed exactly where it was, the bottom object stayed where it was, and it moved the middle object, so it created an equal amount of space between the top and the middle, and then the middle and the bottom. So that can be extremely helpful whenever you're dealing with lots of objects and you want to get them looking really clean and nice and making sure they're all aligned properly. And another feature that can be very helpful is grouping images together. So if you're building your graphics in Storyline, and let's say you're building a graphic that has a lot of moving parts, if you will, 10 or 15 different objects, you can select all those objects, go up to the Group tab, and then select Group. And what that does, it just basically puts them all together. So in this case, it takes all three objects and combines them into one object. And then you can move it around accordingly and do whatever you need to. What also is cool about that, if you group something, you can resize it. So if I just click the Shift key and hold it down, it's going to resize all three of these images or all three of these objects at the same time. So again, that makes it a lot easier than, taking this first one, resizing it, then going to the second one, and then hopefully resizing it the same and doing it to the third one and so on. And by that point, they're out of alignment again, so now you have to go up here to select all the images and realign everything. So it can be very helpful when you're working with multiple objects to group them together, and it makes it a lot easier to move them around and edit them and that type of thing. And of course, we also have the standard options. We can fill these shapes with different colors. We can do different outlines, shape effects like shadows, reflections, and soft edges, and so on. So again, we won't spend a lot of time here because you're already very familiar, I'm sure, with how to edit objects and images once you import them into your authoring software. And that is how you insert and edit objects.